Now I'm happy to welcome for the first time a Heisman Trophy voter and founder of the Pick Six Previews, and Mr. Brett Ciancia. You can follow Brett on X at Pick Six Previews. Brett, thanks for coming on the show. I got your magazine.
There
I
it
got it in
is.
the mail, and dude, when I got it, I just got even more pumped for college football. Man, it's so well put together. Thanks for coming on. How the heck are you doing?
Oh, thanks, Kiev, for having me on. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the praise. Hey, it's the best time of year. Everyone's optimistic about their teams. Everyone's excited. Everyone's undefeated. But this is really the off season of change with the playoff expansion, the super conferences. So really a lot to break down. I'm excited to be on.
Yes, it really is. And we, like you said, no one's lost a game yet from the sports betting world. I call August like the month of hot takes because that's really what it is. And that's pro, that's college. You get a lot of hot takes and you get a lot of big opinions. But obviously for yourself, your opinion has been pretty good because I want to congratulate you on being the most accurate preview out of these magazines for college football. And I heard you on another show say that. And I read a little bit about that. Can you tell me what criteria that's judged upon and who judges it?
Yeah, so it's not just a self-claim. It's there's a third-party site out there. It's called Stassen.com, and this guy Chris Stassen, he's been grading the preseason magazines and all the online publications for years, since the '90s. And turns out he does them in 10-year, 5-year, and 3-year increments. And as of 2023, I had all three of those intervals. I still have the 10-year title. And how he grades that, it's based off conference prediction. So the SEC 1 through 16, how close are you to nailing that prediction? So in the preview magazines where you see them ranking the conferences, the divisions, that's what we're graded on. So the playoff picks are nice too. That's just an overall reflection of the book, but it's really about those conference standings. And yeah, it's a point of pride for me because this is a complete one-man show. And I know the other magazines do good work too, and they're big staffs of hundreds of writers, editors, designers. But Pick Six Previews, it's a one-man show. So that's the goal, is to give the reader the most complete and fun to read also preview with all kinds of insights and analytics, but putting it into a readable format. And then the accuracy title, hey, if they're keeping score, I want to go win the thing. So 10 years running, let's keep it going this year.
Absolutely. Well, this has been out for years now. And there's always been digital, but you went into a nice hard copy, which I love. What inspired you to start this and create this magazine? And I guess I'll ask you, what part of the season afterwards do you start writing it for the following year?
Yeah, well, what inspired me, just the love of college football. I'm based out of Eastern Pennsylvania, about an hour out of Philadelphia. And out here, it's all pro sports talk. It's all Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, Phillies. You don't get much college football coverage. So that was the start of it. It was really tough to go find great content. But it's really out of a love of college football. And then, yeah, I was getting kind of tired of only hearing about Alabama or Ohio State, the usuals on ESPN. The studio shows, they cover 2 or 3 teams. And then the preview magazines, like I said, I appreciate a lot of the work they did. There were certain pieces that I thought should be added or taken out. And I just figured, hey, I want to make my own. So all the information that I found myself researching over the years, trying to find about these teams to make informed opinions, I said, hey, let's throw that together on a page and put it together as a preview magazine. So I think it's taken off. The popularity has been great. A lot of national endorsements. Been able to connect more with the betting, the betting segment of the country, the Vegas gurus and podcasts like this. So it's taken off from a betting angle, as the overall country has too recently. So yeah, that was the goal with it, was to provide the most complete preview magazine possible. And I think it's important too. One last note is to balance the analytics. I have my advanced numbers, my formulas, all that's on the left side of the page. But then to put it back into a readable format, really paint the narrative of all 70 of these Power 5 teams. I'm talking to head coaches, talking to coordinators, learning the X's and O's and putting that into the text so that you get both. You get the numbers and the actual narrative, easy to read. So that's the goal, and I hope that is reflected on the pages.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So East Pennsylvania, is that Penn State land?
Yeah. We have a lot of Penn Staters out here, a little bit of Rutgers. But yeah, it's all Penn State, and then surprisingly, just national fans. You have your Notre Damers everywhere, Ohio State fans. But like I said, it's mostly NFL talk. I tried to get on the local WIP, the sports radio in Philadelphia. It's very well known, And I was like, hey, can I talk Big Ten? Can I talk college football? They said, no, NFC East only. So it's, it's just a very pro sports area. So I've always been drawn to the South, the Southeast, the Midwest, Texas, areas of the country that really appreciate college football like me. So it's great to be expanding nationally.
Totally. Well, are you a Penn State fan? Is that your school?
No allegiance to Penn State, actually. I went to high school here in Pennsylvania. I went to Boston College, so I'm a BC grad. And
Okay.
it's nice because BC really isn't a threat on the national stage. A lot of writers, they get alleged of being biased or having all these, but BC, you can't get me on that because, they've been some tough years. So hopefully they're on the bounce back with Bill O'Brien.
Oh, they only beat Florida State last year, man. Well, hopefully they are on the bounce back here. They definitely have a shot there, but that's cool. That's some good history there. But what gives you a lot of credibility is the fact that you're a Heisman voter, from what I hear. And how did you get started, or what is the process in becoming a Heisman voter? What got you into that?
Yeah, well, it is really the ultimate honor, I think, in college football media to have that credential. I'm really proud of it. So how it works with the Heisman, I think there's about 800 ballots in the country, and there's really two categories. One being former winners. Obviously, when you win the Heisman, you are then granted a Heisman ballot for life. The other being, and the majority being media members. And what it is, it's broken down by state and by region based on the number of FBS teams in that region. So where I am, the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic, they have a certain, X amount of ballots, and then it's divvied up by state. So I don't know the actual math on it. I think it's like 25 or 30 across Pennsylvania. And it's set up by one guy in charge of each state. So our state lead is Dave Jones, formerly of Penn Live. And he caught wind of Pick Six previews about 3 or 4 years ago and called me up and was asking, hey, how big is your staff? What is this company? And I kept telling him, no, it's a one-man show. It's a one-man show. So he was blown away. I met up with him and we talked for a while. And then he was like, hey, do you want to be a Heisman voter? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. That'd be a total honor. And so I've had the ballot since. That was 2019, right before my first hard copy edition. So, it's a total honor. And like I said, I think it's 25 in the state or so. But and the other thing is, a lot of them are beat writers, or they have a certain beat on a conference or a region where you're at practice at Penn State, you're covering just Penn State, you're doing press conferences with Penn State. So I'm a rare case of, I'm not tied to a team. I'm a national guy. So on Saturdays, instead of being on site and doing the beat writer role, I have all my 4 screens lined up. I'm watching everything I can for 14 hours from noon till 2 a.m. with the Pac-12 finishing up. So a little bit different there to come at it from a national angle, but I think that was also appealing to Dave to add me to the PA roster. So, yeah, total honor. It's one of many. So,
Reminds me of a Ron White joke. You want to party on a yacht? Hell yeah, I want to party on a yacht. You want to be a Heisman voter? Hell yeah, I want to be a Heisman voter. That's the only answer, especially as a college football fan and a member of the media. That is fun, man.
yeah,
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on that, man. It's so cool.
thank you.
Who'd you vote for last year?
I was a Michael Penix guy. I know that he finished second, and Jaden Daniels. Look, you could go either way on this. Jaden Daniels statistically was one of the best players ever. I mean, his stat season was unbelievable. The way he stacked the rushing yards and the passing yards. That game against Florida itself was Heisman worthy, and he was a close number 2 for me. But with Penix, just the touch he has on the deep ball, the way that how explosive their passing offense was, the undefeated run. Because I said there's 800 Heisman voters. There's pretty much 800 different Heisman criteria. Everyone has their own criteria, what they weigh more or less. So, everyone's got their fair opinion. I went Penix, but you couldn't go wrong last year.
That's true. And I think I agree with you. I think I was more of a Penix guy himself. LSU just had such a bad defense. They were always in the game. Now, I will say that Daniels was fantastic, but those receivers, Neighbors, and I think it was Thomas, that's a nice little thing to have for when you're chucking that ball up deep for those guys to come and grab them. So I definitely see why Penix was such a good choice. And Penix, going to the playoffs and obviously to the championship game, I think maybe should have given him the edge. So I agree with you on that one. Let's talk a little bit about, and you already talked about your inspiration here. You're a big college fan from Eastern Pennsylvania. The sports media likes to talk too much Philadelphia Eagles football, so that makes sense. What about this now that you have it on hard copy? Before it was just digital. Can I go get this Lindy's and Athlon at the grocery store, or are we not there yet? Or do you just sell it online?
Yeah, great question. It's only available on pick6previews.com, pick6previews on Twitter. And like you said, hard copy right there. It also comes with the digital copy too. So for those 2 or 3 days that it's in transit with USPS, you get the access immediately to the digital PDF. If you're digital only, we have that as well. But for inspiration, like you were asking, I think there's something to be said still about the standalone, the hard copy preview magazine. I know it's a digital world now, and people say that print is dead, but I think there's something about this product. Bring it to the beach, bring it to the lake, the pool, have it on the couch with you during football Saturdays. I think it's something about a tangible preview product. So I'm old fashioned. I read them all when I was growing up. I still read them after mine's published. But yeah, I think there's something about it. So it's really grown since then, going hard copy. I'm not in stores at all. That might be the next step, but for now, distributing just from pick6previews.com.
Pick6previews.com. Do you start immediately after the season then? Do you start compiling the stats for this year? Obviously, this seems to be all very spreadsheet based and kind of like get it into your program to get it printed.
Yeah, it really starts when the confetti drops on national title night. I mean, once that final game is done, that locks in all the stats for that year. And I start working on the numbers part of it. That's kind of January, February is the numbers, the graphics that you see on the page there. And then seeing about NFL decisions, seeing who's going, who's staying, that really can flip the narrative for the next season. Nowadays, we live in the transfer portal world. So you have the transfer cycle in December and then again in late April. So my book comes out a little bit later than the others. It's about a mid-July release, but that allows me to get all the updated numbers and roster data in there for that latest transfer window. So
sure.
Yeah, to answer your question, it's once the season ends, once that national title ends, it's numbers. Throughout spring, I'm calling head coaches, calling coordinators, watching as many spring games as I can get my hands on, practice reports. I mean, anything I can get. I'm addicted to getting the good information and getting all the data I can that's relevant and getting it into the book. So it's a 7-month process. It's very exhaustive. I go position by position, really. It used to be easier back in the day when you just have your recruiting rankings and then who's going or staying. Yeah. Now with the transfer game, it's a whole, it's increased it tenfold. But I think with that, this product does give readers way more information than just a 5,000 foot, a mile high view on a program. Because I really go granular, position by position, who's in, who's out, what the impacts are. So that's the goal with it.
Well, I love the information because I think from a sports betting standpoint, you want some of these statistics that's not really emphasized as much in other magazines. I like how you kind of have it all together here, and I'll just quick put this in front of the camera here. I really love obviously the rushing defense, yards per carry, negative play percentage, explosive rushing, and it's all based on just literally going boom, 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 boom. The other magazines will just be like, where they rank on offense, where they rank on defense, just kind of that tired stuff. But you can kind of see where all this green is here, like for Nebraska right here, that makes you think that, wow, this team could be poised for some positive regression. And I'm somewhat high in Nebraska myself this year, being that, they overhauled their offense. Jeff Sims was terrible last year, and they had the worst turnover margin last year. And that's not something that's always repeated. That's kind of like Nebraska gives me a lot of buy-on signals. And with Raiola as quarterback, it's not shocking to me that you have them ranked 7th for a team that, really underachieved a lot, but positive net yards per play. And, the Matt Rule mind and brain behind that offense makes me feel like just even by looking at this information that they could make a good stretch for a push to win a lot of games this year.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. You talk about turnovers that tend to regress year over year back to the mean. The exception is Nebraska. They've had such bad turnover luck. I think they were minus 31 last year, dead last in the country in turnover margin. And you think, oh, that was just a one-year thing. Not so fast. It's been that way for 20 years. It's unbelievable the kind of luck they've had, or lack thereof, turnover luck, I should say. But I think that starts to change this year with the 5-star quarterback coming in, Dylan Raiola. When you watched Nebraska last year, the pass game was weak, but even like fumbling snaps, Jeff Sims fumbled 2 snaps in the Colorado game that led to touchdowns, just stuff like that. I think the flukiness will go away. And if you can get better turnover play there, a lot of those 1-score losses that Nebraska's also been known for, I call it the Frost advisory, given how poor they've been under Scott Frost in that category. But If you have 5-star quarterback play, even as a true freshman, I watched him in the spring game, and I know it's just a spring game, but he showed the whole arsenal. He had the deep ball, he had touch in the end zone, quick shots. So I think with competent quarterback play, you cut down the turnovers, you flip some of those one-score games. But no, to your point, though, about it being relevant for sports bettors, I agree. That's kind of the goal, too. Is a good example is Utah, where if you were to just look at their win-loss record or just look at their recruiting profile, or some of their stats last year, it wouldn't pop off the page as being a betting favorite for the Big 12. But when you take a look at my preview, you can see not only the what happened last year with the injuries, because they had 157 games lost to injury, I should say. The most I've ever seen, the most injured roster I've ever seen in my life. And that's all in there. So while it's important to have the numbers of last year, you got to paint the picture of what actually happened. So while they were like dead last in passing last year, I think that flips all the way to a positive with Cam Rising back and with Brant Keithy back, their 6-year tight end. And now with the true number 1, Dorian Singer, coming in from the portal. All these names right here, they weren't on the stat graphic last year because they were injured or at other places. So that's why it's so important to not only look at the numbers, you can get numbers anywhere, a lot of them, but really painting the picture of what's happening on campus. So that's why I try and strike a balance there.
And you have them number 1 for the Big 12. That's where you expect them to finish. Number 8th overall is your prediction. Do you have the actual season win total numbers in here that you predict, or do you just kind of come up with them from looking at their schedule and calculation?
I don't have the win total numbers in there. I mean, I do have a couple that I've played and that I like, for best bets kind of talk, and we can get into that per conference. In the book, though, I do include schedule. I have in there where they finish within the conference and their national grade and rank out of 70 Power 4 teams. And one thing to note this year that's even more important schedule-wise, I think people are overlooking the importance of really digging into schedule strength, because back in the day, you'd have your divisions, you'd have your your Pac-12 North, Pac-12 South, SEC East and West, with a very predictable pool of opponents. Nowadays, these schedules are so scattered because you have 18-team leagues and you're only playing 9 of them, and it's all scattered. So I made a huge grid on paper, charting who's got who and, color coding it. It was a lot of calculus that went into it, but you see teams in there like a Rutgers with the schedule boost, where they're ranked a little higher than you'd expect Rutgers to be, but they have the easiest conference draw in the Big Ten. Conversely, Washington, what a heck of a Big Ten welcome gift they get. The hardest Big Ten schedule out there. So a team fresh off of a national title run loses 20 starters, coaching change, and has the worst schedule draw. They're all the way down there, I think, at 9th or just inside the top 40. So the schedule game goes a long way when you're looking at win total numbers, and that's all in the book.
Well, I also like how you have adjustment, opponent adjusted per play statistics, rushing offense, passing offense, defense overall as well, rushing defense, passing defense, and you have that adjusted for strength of schedule, which I always say is very important. Where do you get your strength of schedule numbers? Is that something you're able to say? Is this from you, or is it from other places?
Yeah, well, it's partially proprietary. It's partially based on what the team is averaging, because I think the opponent adjustment in there, I think, is even more valuable than just the raw stats. If you hear a team scored 30 points a game, that's great. What is that in the context of who they played? Do they play against easy defenses or really strong defenses? I think
like Liberty last year and this year.
Right. Yeah, I know. And scoring 40 points on Vanderbilt is a lot different than scoring 40 on an Iowa or a Georgia level of defense. So the opponent adjustment is really strong indicator in there year over year. Also the per play too. I adjust it per play to get in pace of play, because, if you hold Tennessee, for example, to 300 yards, that's more impressive on 90 snaps a game than holding Iowa to 300 yards on 30 snaps a game. So I think the per play, the opponent adjustment, that's all in there. It's all color coded, so it's easy to view at a quick glance. So without getting into all the calculus of the formulas, I think for the reader, you can clearly see, okay, this was a top 10 pass offense, even when adjusting for opponent strength and pace. So, and if you do want the raw numbers, they're in there too. So I have the raw numbers, some of my proprietary stats, the opponent adjustment stats. And then one last thing I'll throw in there that might not be readily available to some folks is having, I call it the talent acquisition graph in there, where I have the 5-year recruiting trend from the high school level. That used to be all that mattered, but there's a lot more to it now. Now I put in the transfer class rankings. So the last 2 transfer halls, where they rank nationally, the number of 4- and 5-star transfers. So a quantity stat there, a blue chip number. And then lastly, I put this in there this year, and it's not exact because we're still 9 months away, but a consensus 2025 mock draft count of how many draftable players that they have for next year's draft. And again, not exact, not perfect, but at a quick indicator, you can see that, okay, Georgia and Ohio State, they are loaded number 1 and 2 with projected draft picks next year. So, yeah, stuff like that I've got in the book right there, very accessible. And, yeah, try and give the most complete picture of a team.
Yeah, right here, actually, the talent acquisition and some of that relevant information. And you also have a return in production rank as well. I've noticed here also on the bottom. Is that your numbers, Bill Conley's, or?
Yeah, so it's funny you say, because at the beginning of the book, the only little asterisk I have is the only number not in here that I didn't provide is Bill Conley's returning production. He does such a great job with that. My hat's off to him. He was really the founder of the returning production number. So I give him a nice citation, nice credit at the beginning. Otherwise, it's all me. So, yeah, I think he does a great job with it. I think it's a good indicator. But again, you got to dig a little bit deeper, even with transfers coming in, transfers leaving. There's just so many variables. So I try and hit them all in the book.
No, great stuff. Well, let's get into some fun talk then for the sports betting perspective. Let's talk a little bit of maybe overrated or underrated. You said you bet some season win totals. So I'm excited to hear some of that. We'll start with the ACC. Give me a team that you think might be underrated and a team that might be overrated, or maybe some season win totals that you bet in this conference.
Yeah, well, I think the big shock pick for me this year is Miami winning the ACC outright. And last year, the shock was Florida State, and that came true ACC-wise. I still think they were robbed of that national title and playoff appearance, going 13-0 and being snubbed. So I'm gonna count that one as a win with the playoff prediction. But no, I think for this year, I like Miami a lot. I think it's a 3-team race. I think you can make the argument for Clemson, for Florida State, and Miami. Some of the negatives on those two. Florida State, such a roster transition this year. And Mike Norvell is really good through the transfer portal. He's going to reload it, but too many uncertainties for me. Clemson has fallen behind for the same reason, not using the transfer portal. The only team in the country to not sign a single transfer coming in. And they recruit well from the high school level, but I think they're really losing a step here by not supplementing their roster with transfers. I think they leave themselves thin and more prone to a recruiting miss here and there, which everyone's going to have. So I faded Clemson. So with Miami, what caught my eye, they were better than their record showed last year, according to my numbers. A lot of green on that page. Top 25 in my game grader last year. They can just learn how to take a knee in victory formation. They'd have another W in the ledger there. But no, I like them statistically last year. I like what they did not only in the high school ranks but in the transfer game. They're the only program out there top 10 in high school recruiting the last 2 years and top 10 transfer the last 2 years. So a lot of talent acquisition coming in for Mario Cristobal. You can doubt his in-game strategy a little bit, but one thing you can't doubt is his ability to build an offensive line, and they got a great one. I think it's a strong offensive line again, and I like what they did with Cam Ward and Damian Martinez, 2 big names coming through the portal. So Miami's the shock pick. I like them to win the ACC. I think it was like 4-1 or something. Pretty favorable odds there. I liked it. And then your other part of the question, an overrated team, I'm going to go under on Clemson's win total. It opened up at 9.5. I love the under there because right away they're playing Georgia right out of the gate, and I got to go Georgia there. They're going to be heavily favored, so I think they take a loss right away. Meaning to lose your 9.5 bet, they'd have to go 10-1 from there. I don't see it happening, so I faded Clemson. I went under 9.5.
I don't disagree with you. Obviously you're really weighing the transfers here. And what's funny is it's almost like you're taking away from the coaching a little bit, which can be good. Mario Cristobal, he's made some that Georgia Tech game, he's made some really, really bad choices. And he's got to learn from that at some point here, I'm hoping. And Dabo Swinney's always been a good coach. But the truth is you think about Dabo and it's kind of his hard-nosed style, and is it still appealing to these generations? I don't know. And he's leaving himself vulnerable by not filling holes with transfers. I feel like his style of coaching is more Belichickian, where if he starts losing, he's going to start losing the team a little bit. It's okay to be a hard-nosed coach if you're winning, so the locker room buys into it. But if he's starting yelling in people's face and stuff like that, and it's not working, I get a little bit worried about that. So I do agree with that. I'm actually more bearish on Clemson myself. Miami, more neutral on. They're pretty, they're up there. They're plus 400. They're, I think, third favorite here to win the ACC because you got Florida State at plus 290, 2.9 to 1. Like you said, thank you. I thought that was a massive snub. You do not put in somebody that lost the game over a conference winner like that. That's ridiculous. And then Clemson at 3.5 to 1 is next, but I do agree with that. And their season win total, I think, was in the 8.5 or 9.5 range for Clemson. I'm guessing you're going under with that, and I'll double check the number.
Yeah, it opened at 9.5. It may have come down since, but the open, I loved it under 9.5. And quickly to your point about the unique coaching style, I agree. It is unique. Hey, I'm a traditionalist. I'm old fashioned too, but the idea of the transfer portal, you got to harness all the modern tools of the game. And I think they're falling a little bit behind. And maybe you take for granted some of that Clemson dynasty, how they had first round talent at quarterback for like 8 straight years with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. So now that they don't have a blue chip first round NFL quarterback, and they don't have Brent Venables, the best coordinator in the game, they look a little bit more human. So. But to counter, I guess the other side of it is I didn't talk to Dabo, but I did talk to PJ Fleck, and I asked him about his coaching style. It's a little bit unique. It's kind of like Dabo in that it's unique. And I asked him about his style. He said, hey, it might not apply to everybody. It might not apply to hundreds of recruits, thousands of recruits, but for the 75, 85 guys we have in that building, they love it and it works. And so that might be a case at Clemson where the players know the style they're signing up for and they love it and they're all bought in. And what's his slogan? All in. So I think they're all in at Clemson. It's just that they're being losing a step in the transfer portal game.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's very true. And so that's something to be definitely watch for the next couple of years. And you're right. They had a hell of a run of quarterbacks with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence there. DJU didn't last. And that's kind of when it went south. Let's talk about Big Ten then, man. I see you have Ohio State at number 1. No surprise. Oregon number 2. No surprise. Penn State number 3. No surprise. Michigan at number 4. You know what's funny? You almost feel like you're disrespecting them, but after what they lost, I might even be lower on Michigan than you. So why don't you talk about the Big Ten from an underrated and overrated perspective?
Yeah, for sure. Well, you nailed it at the top. I think it's Ohio State at the top. They look like a super team this year. They're really all in on 2024. All the chips are in the table. Kind of a dark horse wild card I'll throw in here for underrated. I like Iowa. I know that they've been the punchline of a lot of national jokes about their offense, but I really respect their defense, their formula. They asked Coach Ferentz about his points per game and his yards per game. His best response, I love it. He says, hey, my best stat is wins per game. The guy knows how to win games. So, yep. But no, when you look at Iowa specifically this year, they did a great job with their swarm NIL to defend players from leaving for the portal and for the pros. 8 starters back on defense, 4 of which were named All-American in my book Pick 6 previews. So 4 All-Americans there on defense. They're going to get better offensive play. It cannot get any worse than dead last in the country. They had the coordinator change now with Tim Lester coming in. He's built top 25 offenses in the MAC back in the day, and we'll see if it translates a new fresh set of eyes on this offense and now a legit Power 5 quarterback play too. So I like them to take a step. So that opened at 7.5. I loved it. I got it there. It's since gone up to 8.5. Makes it a little more interesting whether to take it, but I still like it because it's a favorable schedule draw. The only top 5 team in the Big Ten they play is Ohio State. So even if you throw that as a loss, I still think it's a pretty manageable schedule. You're going to have one of the best defenses in the country yet again. And I think an offense and the special teams that'll be able to grind out a couple more wins than usual. So if they hit their normal 9-3 or 10-2 mark, that's going to be a hit on that 7.5 or 8.5. So that's my pick there.
I mean, their schedule's second to Rutgers really in the Big Ten. I mean, at Ohio State. I'd rather play at Ohio State because it's a loss.
Get it out of the way.
I don't want to take a home loss. And this gets me, just beating everybody else could literally get you to play Ohio State again on the neutral field in Indianapolis, right? So my thoughts are, it's interesting that they have Wisconsin at home and Nebraska at home because those are the 2 I'm more worried about. UCLA is junk this year. They're going to UCLA. They're going to Minnesota. I'm not buying into Minnesota anymore. They always play Iowa State, so I'm not worried. That's a normal game for them. But as far as everything else together, they're avoiding Oregon. They're avoiding Penn State. They're avoiding Michigan. Michigan State first year coach. So I'm buying what you're saying there. Absolutely. I was really funny though to look at, because if you look at the pick six previews here and you look under yards per play on offense, they are number 133 on offense and number 1 on defense. It's like this is literally I've never seen a team at the top ends of each spectrum with the total amount of teams, and actually made it somewhat work last year. I don't think we'll ever see it again, Brett.
It can't get any more polarized than that. I mean, you're talking an elite all-time defense. Phil Parker won all the coordinator awards last year. He deserves it. And then the dead last worst offense. I think they averaged like 15 points a game. It's unbelievable. So yeah, you'll never see such a polar opposite of a team. Maybe it's kind of like a Lincoln Riley in the other way. It's like the anti-USC, where it's like they have an offense nobody can stop, but then they can't stop anybody. So no, it's a unique style. You know, I find myself respecting it more and more, the way they're able to just grind out W's and find these wins. But yeah, you know, I like that two of their Big Ten road games are against transitional teams. You know, Michigan State, new coaching staff, they're not going to be up and ready yet. It's going to take a couple years there. Same with UCLA. A late departure by Chip Kelly for Ohio State leaves them in a transitional year. So when you look at it, yeah, I agree with you. Throw that Ohio State game out, make it a road game. Don't cost yourself a home game on that loss. From there, they might be favored in the other 11 games. It's not far-fetched to think. So if you're looking for a team that no one's talking about that might just be up there 10-2, that could be Iowa. And I say 10-2 because in past years, okay, that's a Citrus Bowl. But 10-2 nowadays from the Big Ten or the SEC, you're right there in playoff discussion. I mean, it's a whole new world now with a bracket that has tripled in size.
What about somebody that's overrated then?
I'll go Michigan. I thought when the coaches poll came out, I didn't think that they belonged there in the top 10. And a lot of respect for what they did last year. You know, 15-0 is hard to pull off in any conference, let alone the Big Ten. They went through Ohio State again, made it 3 straight. Went through Nick Saban in his final game and then beat Washington, who looked like the team of destiny kind of feel. So incredible season last year. What made them special was their offensive line. Joe Moore Award winner twice in a row. And they lost not only all 5 starters, but their 6th best guy too. Their 6 linemen. 6 linemen to the pros. I think it's only 1 returning starter on offense, the tight end, Loveland. And then I think a handful, if that, coming back on defense. And I think the defense will still be strong. You have a couple All-American caliber guys there. Will Johnson could be the best corner in the country, and a couple great defensive linemen. But overall, too much change. Now you got more distractions coming in recently this week. So I think when they debuted in the top 10 in the coaches poll, it almost felt like by default, you know, let's keep them in the top 10 because they were last year kind of feel. And that's something to try and fade here from a betting perspective. But yeah, maybe them for the overrated category.
100%. And I think we both agree because I mentioned that already. But I'm also going with what you said earlier with Rutgers over 6 wins. First time I'm giving it away on this podcast, and I'm not sure where it is. I think I laid -115. So at that point, it wasn't too bad. But, you know, the greatest gift to teams like Maryland, Rutgers, and Indiana, and you can even say Michigan State, and it's at -140 now, but still I like it, is the fact that this conference expansion got rid of the divisions. You know, I mean, it's bad for Wisconsin and Iowa and Nebraska and those teams, but it's really good for them. Check out Rutgers' schedule. I mean, this is ridiculous. They get Howard, Akron, and then at Virginia Tech. Okay, that's a little bit tougher. But then Washington at home, at Nebraska, home against Wisconsin, home against UCLA, at USC, who, you know, could massive transition this year, no defense. Bye week, then Minnesota at Maryland, Illinois at home, at Michigan State. There is absolutely no Oregon, absolutely no Ohio State, absolutely no Penn State, and no Michigan on this schedule. How wonderful is that? I think that with Schiano, I do see some green here. I think that this is the year they'll go bowling, man. And over 6, I think they can get 7 or 8.
Yeah, and no Iowa also on there. So they're the only team in the Big Ten to avoid the entire top 5. It's very manageable schedule. They were dealt a nice reward there. And yeah, I mean, a couple road trips, Michigan State, again, a transitional team. The trip to Virginia Tech will definitely be tough, but I think there's enough W's in there. I mean, hey, they won 6 in the regular season last year, so I think they can easily get back to 6. because you're taking out the Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, all those tough games last year. Those are gone and replaced with some of the bottom feeders of the conference. Strong defense, and we'll see about the quarterback connection. They get back Aiden Kaliakmanis, who was the coordinator with Kurt Sriracha out in Minnesota. So they're reunited here. Let's see if they can recreate some of that magic, fix a broken passing attack for Rutgers. But yeah, I agree with you. Great call there on Rutgers.
All right, well, let's do this. Ciano, come on, man. We got to get to a bowl game here. All right, well, let's talk Big 12 then, man. And, Big 12 obviously expanded a lot themselves. I found myself doing my previews and stuff, like spending so much time on these conferences because, again, so much bigger. And now you got teams like Arizona getting into the Big 12 and things like that. Obviously, we touched on Utah being your number one team. I personally was keying in a little bit more on Kansas State, which you don't really disagree with me because they're your number two team. I think you go with the two defenses that have shined in the Big 12. So I think we're completely aligned in here. But give me an overrated or underrated team that you have from this conference.
Yeah, so underrated. I really like UCF here. I think it's a dark horse team. I think I'm the only magazine to have them in the top 25 preseason. I love what they've done in the offseason. So their number opened up at 7.5. I think they cleared that win total. But yeah, with UCF, it's hard to make the transition from the non-AQ game up to the Power 5. And you saw the four newcomers last year really struggle. Cincy, BYU, Houston, and UCF. The four of them together, they went 4-24 against the legacy Big 12 teams. So a learning curve last year. But with UCF specifically, a lot of one-score losses. And in those games, when you watch them, they were winning for a lot of the game. A lot of the first half, third quarter, they're winning. And they started to fade late in the fourth quarter or in the fourth quarter. And I think that signaled that their top line talent is solid, but some of that depth, that Power 5 depth was lacking. So what I like this year, what they did is they stacked their best recruiting class ever, their best transfer haul ever, a lot of returning starters on both sides of the ball. And then also the number one guy, KJ Jefferson, the big 6'6", 250-pounder coming in from Arkansas at quarterback. And you're going to hear this a million times, this comparison. So I'll make it 1,000,001. But with Cam Newton, with Gus Malzahn, with a 6'6", 250 guy, he had a lot of success with Cam Newton in 2010 at Auburn. And he's already made that comparison himself. I'm not discovering something new, but you're going to see that. And his offense thrives with a big body type like that. And Jefferson's a proven commodity at quarterback. So I think this is a sleeper team. And I have them finishing in the top 25.
I can make, this Big 12, I can make probably 12 teams, an argument for 12 teams to be in this championship game. And that was my problem. And to be honest with you, it was like, I can't bet on every single team. So I chose like a very long shot at Baylor at 65-1. And I split my bet up into three. I took Baylor, I took Kansas State at 4-1. And I think the middle one was West Virginia. And just because I thought West Virginia can score some points, but I'll tell you this, I was close on UCF, but I was getting 9-1, 10-1. And I was just thinking to myself, this Big 12 is going to be nuts, but I don't disagree with you. My problem with Jefferson, is he Cam Newton? Because he sure didn't look like Cam Newton with Arkansas. I'm kind of hoping that his offensive line was just so bad there that, it kind of took his confidence and just made him have to charge constantly and run straight forward. But, I think with Gus Malzahn, it's a good comparison. And schedule wise, I don't think that, they have that bad of a schedule, really, UCF. I think no worse than a lot of these other teams, is it?
Yeah, it's a fine schedule. I think the Jefferson thing, you're right about the offensive line being indicative of his success. 21 and 22, those two seasons, he was number 2 and number 4 in the SEC in QB rating. That tanked last year with a terrible O-line. His running back got injured, Rocket Sanders. The team, the locker room kind of collapsed. So I would almost throw out 2023 if you could, because we've already seen 2 good numbers from him the years prior. Yeah, schedule-wise, it's favorable. The non-conference, you get an FCS opener with New Hampshire. You have Sam Houston coming into town. That's 2 wins. The tough one, though, is going into the Swamp October 5th. Now, mid-season, they might not have a coach by then at Florida with Billy Napier, the number 1 odds favorite to be fired mid-season. So who knows about that trip. I know UCF is going to be excited for that game. They've been trying to get Florida to schedule them for decades, and it's been a really contentious point within that state. So to see that game on the schedule, I'm getting excited looking at it. I'm not even a UCF fan at all, but I know that they've been wanting that matchup for a while. So, yeah, I like UCF here. I agree with what you're saying.
I will bet that he gets fired after that game. I think that's the game
That could be
after.
the knockout.
I think that's the knockout ball. Okay. That's going to be a fun game, man. And I feel sorry for Florida with their schedule. But, man, UCF, I don't disagree with you. I mean, they avoid Kansas, they avoid Kansas State. They at least get Utah at home for the very last game. Utah traveling across the country from Mountain Time all the way to East Coast time. Curious about what time that game's going to be on, but that's just going to be very interesting. And yeah, Florida's still a non-con game. You know, they get some pretty easy games against Colorado at home, Cincinnati at home, BYU at home. Arizona's just Fafita and nobody else, in my opinion, after they lost their coach to Washington. So I'm buying what you're selling there. Let's talk about the SEC then. Finally getting into the SEC. No different. And I think I hate having to agree all the time on rankings, but my rankings, your rankings, I think we're all pretty dang close in the SEC. I think a couple differences that you might have, and I have Georgia, Texas. Okay, I have Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama. Let's just get that. Let's get that out of the way. I am completely aligned with you on there, but I like how you have Tennessee a little bit ahead of LSU. They got a new quarterback there that should be interesting, and then Texas. It's interesting how you still have Texas A&M high above Missouri. You have Missouri all the way number 8. So I don't think they're liking you in Missouri. What happened there?
I know. Yeah, you're right. I'm not making any friends this year in Columbia, Missouri. That's for sure. I'm getting a lot of hate mail from there. Hey, a lot of respect for what they did last year. Eli Drinkwitz, his new zoo program, he called it, is recruiting branding. It really hit home. It was a banner season, 11 wins last year. They had the near 6 win over Ohio State, explosive offense. I think a lot of that will come back on the offensive side of the ball. You got Brady Cook, you got Luther Burden, surefire All-American pick there. I think it's 9 starters back. You do lose Schrader, the workhorse back, but I like what they do on offense. My big hang up with Missouri is defensively, and I think that was an underrated part of the team last year. You can see in my numbers there, I have them top 15 opponent adjusted defense. So really the unsung heroes was that side of the ball. And the brains of the operation is gone with Blake Baker gone. I love his defense. It's aggressive. It's blitz happy. Great schemer. And what happened is LSU poached him with the biggest coordinator contract in college football history, $2.5 million. So he's been plucked out of there, out of Missouri, along with, I think, 6 or 7 starters gone, a lot of them to the pros. So a little bit too many questions for me on defense. I know they've recruited well, but within the SEC context, at the middle of the pack. It sounds crazy to say, but you're still just treading water against these Tennessee, Texas A&M, LSU super recruiters. So, I'm fading Missouri this year. But here's the thing. With how strong this conference is, I still have 9 SEC teams in my top 20 nationally. So it's just super conference of all super conferences this year. So I have Missouri sliding down a little bit.
From a sports betting perspective and somebody that bets sports a long time, this is a perfect sell. Whenever a team sneaks up to the top just for that 1 year, they're usually a big fade. Just like I'll give you an example. Mel Tucker's Michigan State, his first year at Michigan State, it was great. And they come in all high in the power ratings and everything. And people are just like, the smart ones faded them. And this could be Missouri. Missouri really won a lot on Cook's legs last year. It was really that. And I think that if it wasn't for their dang schedule, avoiding Georgia, avoiding Texas, and I think they avoid Tennessee or LSU or both. That, it's both. It's almost like that.
It's a favorable draw. I know it's definitely favorable. And the non-conference is easy too. You got Murray State, Buffalo, BC. And what else? That's
Vanderbilt,
UMass there. UMass in October. They're going up to UMass, the rare trip to McGuire. So so that's 4-0 in the non-con. But yeah, we'll see. I think the number was 9.5. So it's whether you think they go 9-3 or 10-2. So I'm leaning towards the 9-3 barrier there.
How the heck did the UMass get them to come over there? I don't understand.
I don't understand it. Yeah, I don't get it.
Makes no sense. Well, they have a lot to live up to now, and I will not. They're not going to be first on my betting menu for an on team. Probably going to be more of a fade team from my perspective. So, did you bet a season win total then on them or anybody else?
Ole Miss, I went with the over 9. I don't know if it's still at 9, but I really like Ole Miss. This is a team where, and this is important, we talked about the talent acquisition graphic in the book. This is what made me think of it, because with Ole Miss, they're never near the top 5 in high school recruiting. They're usually 25th or so. But where they narrowed the gap the last couple of years was transfer portal. And Lane Kiffin calls himself the portal king. He's backed it up. 3 straight top 2 classes. So in the book there, you see that the high school recruiting isn't that sharp, but the transfer game, they're number 1 in the country. So they stacked the roster again with all SEC guys, all American caliber players from all over the country. I think 7 guys landed on my SEC all transfer team, most of any team in the country. And that's coming off of an 11-win season, a banner year for them as well. Another New Year's 16 last year. They beat Penn State, and I love their offense. I can go on and on, but I think it's a decent schedule draw, and I think they're going to get to 9 wins. So 9's a push. Anything above that's a win. I like them to win that total bet and then make the playoffs too. If my projection holds, they'll be hosting a playoff game in Oxford, Mississippi, which would be the biggest tailgate of all in the best tailgate spot in the country. So we'll see. I'm buying them. It's a team that's not usually discussed in a playoff discussion, but they're certainly there this year.
Ole Miss number 3 in the SEC, yet number 5 on your overall rankings. Like you said, the SEC is stacked, and that's why you see some of these teams up here. It is 9.5 on DraftKings, but I think if you shop around, I'd rather take a 9 minus 160, 9 minus 170, just so you're safe. If it lands on that 9, I think hiccups are definitely possible, but they also have like you said, the very favorable draw. At least they get Georgia at home. I think that's huge. They avoid some of the other big power teams. Like I said, they avoid the Texases. I think they even avoid Oklahoma. Oklahoma could be very feisty this year. I don't know. I know they're jumping into a much tougher conference in themselves too. They avoid Tennessee. Yeah, Ole Miss has the schedule to be able to do it as well. And man, it would be fun to see them beat Georgia. I know Georgia's not going to win all 12 games. I don't care. It's too hard for Georgia from a schedule standpoint. Don't you think?
Yeah, Georgia got the hardest schedule draw out there. I think they face all 3 of my other SEC playoff teams. They have Texas, they have Ole Miss, and they have Alabama all in the docket. But yeah, so that's a tough draw for them. And they open with Clemson. Like we said, I like Georgia to win that game, but still, that's a tough ranked non-conference game right there. Yeah, but no, I like Georgia. And this was an interesting prop that I saw put up there. Chris Andrews at South Point put it up. The Georgia and Ohio State pair or the field for the national title. And it was even odds. It was like minus 110 both ways. I lean Georgia, Ohio State in that because of the high quality depth. Just number 1 in recruiting the last 5 years, number 1 in draftable players for 2025 mock draft, great transfers coming in, returning production's high. So in an extended season where you have these super conferences, a tough title game, and then 3, maybe 4 playoff games, it's going to be all about depth. And I think no one has the better depth than Georgia and Ohio State this year. It's a machine. I call them the 33rd NFL team, Georgia. So I think they're the best equipped to go get the title.
I mean, that's such an interesting bet. What's funny is I almost kind of like that more with 12 playoff teams.
Yeah.
Because if it's 4, just a hiccup or 2 in the middle, but the true strength of them can show in the playoffs when it's important. So it's kind of weird how that dynamic changed a little bit. And I heard that bet earlier and I thought about it some. I'm not going against it. I'm not going the other way because I could see one of these teams for sure representing and just kind of blowing through the playoffs here. Either of these teams might get a bye, but we are out of time. Brett, thanks so much for coming on, breaking down the wonderful statistics. Where could our listeners get this wonderful preview magazine?
Oh, thanks so much for the praise. And yeah, great chat. Want to come on mid-season and see how this is all stacking up. But pick6previews.com for the preview magazine. We have the hard copy edition shipping out and the digital copy as well. When you buy the hard copy, you get the digital. Thanks for giving me a look on there. We have testimonials from the college game day guys, from Scott Van Pelt, and it's been great. So check it out, pick6previews.com. And yeah, good luck with all your bets this year. It's been great talking. And we'll chat mid-season, see where everything is shaking out.
Oh, absolutely. We'll definitely be chatting mid-season. Make sure you guys check out pick6previews.com.